Hi, my name's Craig. Welcome back to my hangar. I've been flying for about 28 years now, and I don't know if you caught the last episode. This is number 2, but I'm not a CFI. I'm an instrument-rated pilot, and I just thought I would use this forum to share a few things that I've learned over the years that are kind of important, that are not necessarily technically oriented, but just more of what's important to me as a VFR and IFR pilot. Today, I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts about speed. And I don't mean speed like is Mooney better than Bonanza, but I'm talking about the rate of speech that sometimes you hear air traffic controllers use in various parts of the country. And I've flown all over. I've been all over Northern California, Southern California, the Central Valley, North Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, Idaho, Hawaii, and even Lake Como, Italy, which they actually speak English there in the plains. And also, by the way, Lake Como, Italy is home to the largest and oldest, not the largest, but the oldest seaplane club in the world. So I was fortunate enough to be able to fly there. I like to talk about 4 different categories that I use to think about how fast air traffic controllers talk. One of them, which is clearly the worst, is hyper and confusing, followed by fast and concise, followed by relaxed and friendly, and then the final category I call uncomfortably quiet. So let me go into some of detail about this just to share some of my experiences. Under the hyper and confusing category, most pilots and most controllers, we all have challenging days. And sometimes, if you've had a little too much coffee, you can be speaking too fast. As a matter of fact, sometimes you may hear on the automated terminal information system, ATIS, sometimes the controllers, when they record that from the tower, go through it so fast that you have to listen to it 2 or 3 times to get that recording because they're just speaking too fast. I do remember a departure out of Van Nuys Airport one time that kind of illustrates the point of a fast-talking controller. I don't believe this was tower. I think it was approach. And I was flying out of Van Nuys Airport going north towards Castaic and over the mountains back to Northern California. And I was fine. They gave me a vector to fly out of, certain altitude to fly out before departing their airspace, and there wasn't a problem with it at all. However, there was an approach controller that was just having a real tough day, and he was barking at everybody and talking way too fast. And on a Saturday morning, you got to expect you're going to have people with new airplanes that have a lot of money, maybe aren't as experienced as they should be just yet, have trouble taking direction, and you will also have student pilots. You'll have a large mix. Now, as I mentioned, I was fine. There wasn't anybody, nobody picked on me, but this particular air traffic controller on SoCal Approach, I think it was, he was yelling at everybody, talking way too fast and having to repeat, ironically, and trying to save time. He was having to repeat himself 2 or 3 times and yelling at these different pilots. And I felt sorry for the pilots. I didn't voice my opinion on that because I had nothing to do with it and nobody was worried about what I was doing. I was on my way. But if I had been one of those pilots, what I probably would have told the guy was, would you please slow down your speech? I'm having trouble understanding you. And I think as a pilot, that's your prerogative to tell air traffic control that. Sometimes they're very busy, and if you're talking about Los Angeles airspace, particularly down in the basin down there, it's a real free-for-all sometimes. Very, very active. So you do want to be crisp and concise, but you have to slow down your speech, or controllers need to slow down their speech too, so that you can communicate at once and clearly. And along those lines, too, if you feel intimidated or you don't understand an ATC instruction, even if they're going to yell at you, which they probably won't, ask them to repeat it. And if you have to ask more than once or explain more than once, do it, because it's going to be much better if you understand what you're supposed to be doing, than if you don't and you take an action that causes possibly a safety concern. And worst of all, if you've ever heard, and I've been very fortunate not to be in this position, but if you've ever heard, we have a phone number for you to call, possible pilot deviation, that's probably the worst thing you want to hear. So just make sure you understand what they're saying, and if you don't understand, exit the area. Tell them that it's too congested, you want vectors out of the area, or just tell them where you're going to head, and just change your plan and get to someplace that's quieter. So that would be my advice on that. As far as fast and concise, I think this was a good attitude to have anytime in an airplane. If you are crisp with your communications and brief, I think that's great. There's certain phrases that you'll get used to as you build your time as a pilot, and you'll know what to expect from the controllers. And it's just kind of a dance. So it works out real well if you just keep things brief. I had a friend up in the Sacramento area, Bill, and he was a great guy. He rented airplanes, and Bill liked to talk. And I couldn't believe what Bill would get away with some of the Sacramento controllers. It was amazing, because Bill would respond to a question or tell him what his intentions were, and then Bill would give him a whole bunch of extra information that they probably didn't care about. I mean, it was kind of like, I don't know, having a relative along and at a party and they're starting to talk too much or something, and Bill would do that. But he never got in trouble, and it just kind of blew my mind, because I would think if I had done the exact same thing that Bill had done, they would have chewed me out, but they didn't. I guess he had a charming personality, but you do want to try to be concise. So as much as I like Bill, don't be like Bill. The other one is relaxed and friendly. If you go to some areas, particularly like in the Central Valley and here in North Texas, more rural areas, less traffic, maybe New Mexico, you'll find the controllers are very relaxed and very friendly, and they're not like a machine gun rattling off instructions, because they have a lot of time on their hands and they can explain things. As a matter of fact, there have been occasions when things are relatively quiet. I'll ask the controller a question about something that's been on my mind, about procedure or something like that, and as long as there isn't other traffic around that they have to occupy their attention to, it's fine. So take advantage of those moments sometimes to ask a controller something. If you've often wondered why they use a certain phrase or what a certain thing means, or maybe a certain procedure, don't be afraid to ask. One of the ones I asked the other day, I guess I should have known this. I mean, I knew what it meant, but you might have heard the term 5x5, and that has to do with radio frequency. I think I was flying with my youngest son, Cameron, and he had that question, and I found out I really couldn't answer it very well. So I asked the controller about it, and he told me what it was, but he didn't even know what the 5 and the 5 meant. But it was maybe 20 seconds of time to ask about something like that, and I've done it on occasion. So just know that they're there for you to answer questions if it's not too busy. Then there's the uncomfortably quiet scenario. And I've been through an uncomfortably quiet scenario a few times. Sometimes it means you're not on the right frequency. Sometimes it means that your comm setting on your radio is not on the right switch, and you think you're talking to people and you're not. If you don't hear anything, and anytime you change frequencies, it's always a good idea to just take a minute or 30 seconds and just listen and see what's going on. Sometimes you will not hear the pilot traffic, but you'll hear the controller traffic as far as their speech, and just give it a second to see. It's just like you wouldn't walk into a room and enter talking. You would probably walk into a room, see who's there, assess the situation, and then you can speak. And it's no different in an airplane. So one time I was flying out of Burbank, and it was sunset. And I was starting to fly up over the hills, and I realized that I was going to be about maybe 30 minutes behind schedule. And the controller, and even though it was Burbank, the departure controller, for whatever reason, was really quiet. I asked him, do you mind doing me a favor, because it sounds like it's really quiet right now? He says, sure, go ahead. What? I said, And this was in the days before a lot of automation in the cockpit and communication, like with landlines. I asked him, do you mind making a phone call to my wife and telling her that I'm going to be maybe about 30 minutes late to the airport? And he says, okay, which surprised me, but I thought, if you don't ask, you don't get. And he said, sure. So I gave him the phone number, our home phone number. And this is just like a typical guy thing, just brain dead, right? Didn't even begin to think through what's going to happen when my wife, Karen, answers the phone and he says, this is air traffic control calling. And of course, the first thing is she's going to flip out thinking that I've crashed or something bad has happened to me. And of course, I'm so brain dead as a guy, I didn't even think that went through. So he did make the phone call and everything was fine. He explained to her, no, he's fine. But it was one of those things that I guess I got into a little bit of hot water because it was a little bit too quiet. So just wanted to share some of this with you. I think maybe if you just the takeaway from this video is if you get into a situation where you do not understand instructions or things are happening way too fast or you have to ask for too much clarification, exit the area. There was a very tragic, fatal crash, 3 people involved, of a Cirrus down in Houston Hobby Airport for exactly that reason. The pilot was too compliant, didn't speak up, and it would have been much better for all involved if she had exited the area if things got too hectic, which they did for her, and she ended up stalling the airplane and crashing it. So communications have very real-world consequences, and just stay safe out there. Don't let anybody intimidate you. Be professional, courteous. Don't challenge controllers, but certainly they're there to help you. And good controllers, of which there's about 99.9%, they want to make sure that they're helping you. And sometimes they may not realize if they're just speaking way too fast. So that's it for Craig's Hangar today. I hope you enjoyed that, and I might make another video. Thanks.